Hey everyone, this is Dan Cohen with Mint Press News Behind the Headlines. Today we are going to be discussing biological laboratories in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. This has become a major point of contention between the US and Russia in recent days as this crisis continues to unfold. So there's no better guest to speak about this than Dilyana Gaytandzhieva, who has been investigating these biological laboratories for years and has been attacked relentlessly in US media for her factual investigations. So welcome, Dilyana. First, I want to play the this clip of Victoria Nuland, who is a top State Department official and has a lot of relevance to Ukraine in particular, considering she was on the ground in 2014 during the Euromaidan, basically orchestrating the coup d'etat. So here's what she said on Tuesday afternoon about these biological laboratories.
So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
I'm sure you're aware that the Russian propaganda groups are already putting out there all kinds of information about how they've uncovered a plot by the Ukrainians to release biological weapons in the country and with NATO's coordination. If there's a biological or chemical weapon incident or attack inside of Ukraine, is there any doubt in your mind that 100% it would be the Russians that would be behind it?
There is no doubt in my mind, Senator, and it is classic Russian technique to blame on the other guy what they're planning to do themselves.
So it's pretty remarkable to me that Marco Rubio starts speaking about chemical weapons and saying, it seems like he's pushing Victoria Nuland to basically say that if anything happens with these, research laboratories, if any attack happens, then it's going to be Russia's fault. So I don't know. How do you interpret that exchange, Dilyana?
First, Under Secretary of State Victoria Nuland, she actually confirmed information that has been debunked as fake news and conspiracy theory for a few years. She confirmed finally that Ukraine has biological research facilities and that the United States is working with Ukraine because they are worried that these research materials may fall into the hands of Russia. And this begs questions of what these research materials are. And actually, she confirmed what Russia said a few days ago. They said that according to documents obtained from this Pentagon funded by Laboratories, on the 24th of February, this is the day when Putin started this military operation, and the same day the Ministry of Health of Ukraine ordered scientists to destroy urgently bioagents and deadly pathogens in this Pentagon funded by Laboratories. So she actually confirmed what Russians said. And finally, the United States confirmed that under this biological engagement program in Ukraine, local scientists, along with the United States, they produced research materials that now the United States is worried may fall into the hands of Russia. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, this is because the United States is afraid that these research materials, whatever this means, these research materials will prove that the United States has violated Article 1 of the Bioweapons Convention, which prohibits the production of biological weapons when this is not for research purposes, when this is not for defensive purposes. And we can't say that this is for defensive purposes because this is not in the United States. This research is outsourced and it is in Ukraine. So this means that in this case, we are not talking about biological research for defense.
Right. I mean, we saw that many documents were removed from the U.S. Embassy's website, which, early on in this, at the very beginning of this military operation. Let me see if I can pull it up so people can see what I'm talking about. So, this is the U.S. Embassy's website with their biological threat reduction program. And if you go to these fact sheets on the right side, you'll see that they are dead links. So, there's one, here's another. All of these documents were removed without any kind of explanation by the U.S. Embassy. Fortunately, they've been archived. They've been saved on the Wayback Machine. So I have it here. Here is the site on the Wayback Machine, and here are some of these documents. So we see clearly that these programs are funded. Here it says donor, United States Defense Threat Reduction Agency. It's an arm of the Pentagon. Here's another one, and here's one more: Pathogen Asset Control System, an electronic system for accounting, management, and control of biological agents. So it's really strange, or raises a lot of questions, we should say, about why the U.S. suddenly removed these documents. What do you think about the disappearance of these documents, Dilyana?
Now this only proves again what Victoria Nuland said, that the United States is worried that all this information can fall into the hands of Russia, and this is further evidence of biological research program of the United States abroad that could not be called defensive, but it could be linked to other activities of concern. Actually, what happened was that the US media constantly published smear articles against me, calling me fake news, calling all this information conspiracy theory. So after one of these articles, I decided to, on my turn, to debunk their claims that this is fake news. So I decided just to publish the links to these documents that are now removed, and I accessed I opened the site, I tried to access these documents, and it turned out that they are removed, they are no longer available. And actually, without these documents, we can't prove that the US funded biological research facilities, as Victoria Nuland put it, or biolaboratories. So without all these 11 pieces of evidence, 11 documents, we can't prove that we are right. Oh, having said we, I mean journalists that are working and investigating who is right in this case, Russia or the United States. And by removing these documents, the United States really can say, no, we didn't fund anything. But other documents, again, originating from the US Federal Contracts Registry, from the US government website, prove that under another program that started in 2021, the Pentagon contracted an American company to rebuild and equip 2 new biolaboratories in Ukraine, in Odessa and in Ukraine's capital, Kiev. the sum that was allocated for these two new biolaboratories in Kiev and Odessa is $23 million. Again, under this biological engagement program, and according to other documents which I obtained from the US Federal Contracts Registry, until 2020, the Pentagon or the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, which is an agency part of the Pentagon in charge of this program, allocated $80 million for this program in Ukraine. People can judge themselves. The United States says we have nothing to do with biolaboratories in Ukraine. Okay, but they paid $80 million in addition to this $23 million for two new biolaboratories. So what was this money paid for? $80 million plus $23 million. This means more than $100 million for what in Ukraine under this program. So all these facts, documents originating from the US government website, they prove that the United States, the Pentagon, funded biological research facilities in Ukraine. And as Victoria Nuland confirmed, as a result of this program, in possession of scientists in these biolaboratories, there are biological research materials that the US fears may fall into the hands of Russia. If this is not of concern, if these are just simple viruses, pathogens, then why are US officials so worried that these materials could fall into the hands of Russia?
Right, exactly. Raises many questions that, I think US senators, members of Congress should be questioning the Pentagon about, should be holding hearings. But, so far we're not seeing anything. Instead, we just see, Marco Rubio saying, well, if there's some kind of biological attack, then, then it's the Russians. So very revealing moments here. You've done reporting on other biological laboratories in Eastern Europe, not far from Ukraine. And so what can you tell us about what goes on in any of these other laboratories that you've investigated?
Yes, I started investigating Pentagon-funded biolaboratories probably since 2018. I learned from a Georgian journalist that the Pentagon built one biolaboratory in the capital of Georgia, Tbilisi, and the sum that was spent on this biolaboratory was impressive. $171 million. In the beginning, I didn't believe this journalist. I mean, I didn't believe the gravity of the problem, biolaboratory of the Pentagon in Georgia. So I started doing some research, and it turned out that the Pentagon has funded biolaboratories in 25 countries around the world. Many of these biolaboratories are located around Russia, on the borders of Russia, namely in Georgia, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan. All these biolaboratories, if we look at the map, they are located in 25 countries, bordering on the Pentagon main rivals, Russia, China, and Iran. Also, there are biolaboratories in Africa, which also begs questions of why are all these biolaboratories located in poor regions or in not that rich countries, let me put it that way, where human rights, are not so much or are violated, when people cannot defend their rights or are very poor. And if I give an example with Georgia and Ukraine, this program of the Pentagon falls under special agreements signed between Ukraine and the United States and Georgia and the United States. Under special provisions in these agreements, US government personnel, including US military scientists, cannot be held to account, and against them, the host state cannot start legal proceedings in case or if these military scientists cause death or injuries to the local population. They are indemnified for deaths, fatalities, and injuries to the local population arising out of activities under this agreement. Also in Georgia, and I went myself into Georgia, I filmed myself, I saw myself, these military scientists have been accorded diplomatic immunity to research deadly viruses, bacteria, and toxins, also antibiotic-resistant bacteria being studied on the local population. They drive diplomatic vehicles, they enjoy diplomatic immunity without being diplomats. I approached one of these scientists and I asked him why he was driving diplomatic car and was he an employee of the US Embassy. He refused to answer my questions. And here comes the question, why, if all this is for the benefit, for the good of the local people, then why are these scientists, why have they been given diplomatic immunity, and why are they indemnified for deaths and injuries to the local population in case that they cause such deaths or injuries to the local population? And also, I asked the scientists in the Lugar Center, this is the name of the Pentagon-funded biolaboratory, to give me an interview, to give me a comment. They refused to comment what actually they were doing in this biolaboratory.
Let's look at this investigation you did. Let me pull it up into that you published in January of this year. It's called Documents Expose U.S. Biological Experiments on Allied Soldiers in Ukraine and Russia. So, just explain what exactly you found. That's a pretty shocking headline, and it's impossible to know at this point what has gone on in these other laboratories in Ukraine. But I mean, this is pretty remarkable. So tell us what you learned.
According to internal documents that originate from this Pentagon program in Georgia and in Ukraine, the Pentagon has conducted biological experiments on 1,000 soldiers in Georgia and 4,400 soldiers in Ukraine. According to these internal documents, all volunteer deaths will be promptly reported. This is the exact quotation that I'm using now to ask the question, if this program was safe, if it was for the benefit of the local population and the local soldiers, then why is this text in the documents that all volunteer deaths will be promptly reported? This means that this program or these two projects in Georgia and in Ukraine, they have risks or involve even lethal risks that would lead to lethal outcomes. And according to the documents and under this program, blood samples were drawn and were studied for the presence of antibodies against 14 bioagents. The results of these blood draws and blood tests were not provided to the study participants, which is also strange because why can't soldiers see the results of their blood tests? This is strange. It is not. This is not how it should be. And the same program is going to be launched in my country, Bulgaria, as well. I asked the Bulgarian authorities about this program. They confirmed that the Pentagon has funded a program on Bulgarian soldiers that is going to start this month, but they didn't provide the documents and the agreement signed with the Pentagon. So I am wondering if all of this is for our good, for our benefit, for our safety. Why can't we see the agreements? Why can't we see the internal documents? Why aren't they made public so that people familiarize themselves with what their governments have signed and what experiments have been conducted? This is is further evidenced by the fact that Victoria Nuland is worried that these biological research materials that are a result of the Pentagon program in Ukraine, for instance, they can fall into the hands of Russia, which means that we need to know what are these biological research projects, what are these research materials that are so or that because of which the United States is so worried that they may fall into the hands of Russia.
Right. So here's, we're looking at the documents you obtained right here, and you've highlighted this key part: unanticipated problems involving risk to volunteers or others and all volunteer deaths. So that suggests that they're conducting experiments that are potentially lethal at this laboratory. The soldiers' blood samples will be stored and further tested at the Lugar Center, and this is what you were talking about, this this facility in Tbilisi that you did a really powerful documentary, an investigation into, that everyone should watch. Why don't we show? Let's see if is there anything else you want to show from this article, or should we should we just show a section of this documentary, of your documentary?
Yes, you can also show the agreement signed between the United States and Ukraine, so that people see what I was talking about, that the US scientists, they are indemnified for deaths and injuries caused to the local population. This is in the end of the article, and it proves that all these activities, they are under diplomatic cover and also under special legal protection provisions, which indemnify all these scientists, and they can be held to account in case that any of these participants in their studies die, for instance, or is injured.
So yeah, here it is. Here is the section in the article. So it says, here's the document. Georgia shall, in respect of legal proceedings and claims other than contractual claims, hold harmless and indemnify the United States of America and its personnel, contractors, and contractors' personnel for damage to property or death or injury of any persons in Georgia rising out of activities under this agreement. So basically, these U.S.-funded laboratories where scientists are being afforded diplomatic immunity, there is no accountability for anyone who is injured or killed as a result of these experiments, of whatever is going on in these laboratories. And so here's basically the same kind of agreement in Ukraine. I mean, that's remarkable, and really should, again, raises huge questions about what exactly is going on in these laboratories that are in basically U.S. vassal states that border Russia. So
also, why don't the Pentagon sign such an agreement with France, with Germany, Why? Why in poor countries like Bulgaria, Georgia, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, and others bordering on Russia? Why is that? Because countries in Western Europe, they will never sign such an agreement, and they will never allow foreign scientists, military scientists, to perform experiments and to not be held to account in case of emergency or deaths or injuries to the local population.
Right, exactly. Let's show a couple of segments from your documentary, and that will, I think, give people an idea of what this is like for local populations. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Okay. So first, before we start, just set up the scene here. This is outside the this biolaboratory in Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, that you investigated. So, and who is this, and that we're going to hear from? Tell us what it is.
First, I met with the local people living around this biolaboratory because, to my dismay, this biological research facility was located inside a neighborhood, and this laboratory was adjacent to the homes of the people. And this man lives 200 meters from the building, which is the building of the laboratory.
Okay, so let's play a short
his testimony.
Okay.
Afraid to speak up.
Реально, моя голова болит. Иногда вот когда выпускают вот это все, ветер обычно оттуда на нас идет. Вот запах тухлых яиц бывает, это что-то. Иногда вот такой, знаете, вот фиолетовый цвет выходит, иногда какой-то... Я один раз ночью, говорю, проснулся, утром уже светалось. Смотрю оттуда, я оделся, подошел, ночью дым выпускают. От кого вы прячете?
Тоже были случаи с филиппинцами. Они на квартире жили в 44-м корпусе. Лабораторию, когда еще они совсем не достроили. Был несчастный случай.
Какой случай?
Сейчас умерли люди, филиппинцы, вот эти двое. Двоих куда увезли, куда еще 4 их было. Ну, кто его знает, как случилось. Что-то они там работали, видимо, отравились чем-то, каким-то газом.
Скажи, как вот эти вот отравились эти филиппинцы, все.
Мои соседи филиппинцы на площадке жили. Один раз отравились они, позвали, нас попросили позвать скорую помощь, мы вызвали. Оклемались, сказали, вроде бы от рыбы отравились. А второй раз стучали, тоже просили о помощи. Там жило 4 филиппинца, 2 из них их откачали, а 2 умерли. Это то, что мои глаза видели.
So the neighbors complain of strange smells, and then there were 2 mysterious deaths right next to this facility. That's pretty remarkable. Was there any kind of, did anything happen as a result? Were those deaths investigated?
No, local authorities flatly denied such an incident, and according to the local people who witnessed these death cases, they were told that it was probably fish poisoning, or it wasn't known what exactly happened to these 2 Filipino workers, but these were Pentagon contractors. They worked at the Luga Center, and they rented a flat in the vicinity of the Lugar Center, and twice they almost died. The last time they really died, and all was covered up. But I myself, I went to the flat where this happened, where these Filipino workers or Pentagon contractors lived, and it was closed, it was locked, and nobody lived there for unknown reason. If it is safe to live there, but it wasn't safe to live there. It was locked. Whole area was locked.
Okay, let's show another. I mean, there's so many remarkable sections in your documentary. I mean, one thing maybe before we show another clip, we can talk about is that as you show in the documentary, is that they were using diplomatic cargo for this military program to traffic human blood. Can you explain that?
According to documents that were leaked by insiders, this American program, which is for which, again, like in Ukraine, the US says it is for the benefit of the local population. Scientists working under this program have been given diplomatic immunity. This means that all viruses, bacteria, toxins, or in short, as Victoria Nuland put it, research materials, they are diplomatic cargo. And because they are for diplomatic needs of these diplomats that are not diplomats, they are scientists, but they are given diplomatic immunity, so they can transport viruses, bacteria, and toxins, including frozen human blood, as diplomatic cargo. Diplomatic cargo or material that is being transported and protected as diplomatic cargo, they are not subjected to inspections, bills, searches, anything. So we don't know what they have transported, but according to these documents, frozen human blood and pathogens were transported as diplomatic cargo. So this is another question. Why is this? Why would scientists need diplomatic immunity in the first place? For instance, and we can see him later if you show this segment, the deputy director of this Pentagon unit that operates the Luga Center, he was an entomologist. He is a scientist who studies insects. Why somebody who studies insects needs diplomatic immunity? What for? There is no answer. I approached him. I tried to ask him, but he just ran away with his diplomatic card.
Let's show that. Let's show the clip you're talking about here.
Joshua Bast is Deputy Director of the U.S. Army Medical Research Unit, Georgia. The American military scientist drives a diplomatic car and enjoys diplomatic immunity without being a diplomat.
You work here because we saw this car last day and you're here again, so you're working here. You're from the U.S. Embassy. What are you doing here at the Luga Center? Are you a scientist? You're a scientist?
Joshua Bast is an entomologist and researches insects.
Yeah, there we see a military scientist working under diplomatic cover.
This is Joshua Bast, or this was Joshua Bast, who was deputy director of this research unit that operates Pentagon laboratory inside this big center called Lugar Center. In Georgia, I also published documents about 248 death cases that were registered during an experimental American program on the treatment of hepatitis C in Georgia. Lugar Center was the leading biolaboratory under this experimental program. According to these leaked documents originating from the program, in the majority of the death cases, the cause of death was listed as unknown. 248 death cases. and the majority of them were listed as unknown. According to local authorities, it is fine. It is not a problem that so many people died. So it's normal thing in life, people to die. I'm not joking. This is the answer that local authorities gave. And in general, if you ask the Ukrainian government, the Georgian government, or the United States, the answer is always the same, always for our benefit. But if you look at the documents, they show something different, and they even show that all these experiments involve deaths or lethal risks to the local population.
Right. Let's show, there are a couple more clips that really stuck out in my mind. I mean, everyone should watch this documentary. It's only 27 minutes, but it's really alarming what it shows, and it's an incredible investigation. There is this development that you show of toxic mosquitoes, I believe. Let me just pull up this clip. You can explain that.
According to a patent that I found in the US Patent Registry, American scientists have developed a special drone for dispersal of toxic mosquitoes. So I decided to reach out to find this scientist and to interview him to discover what is the need of such this is biological weapon, and this is a drone for dispersal of toxic mosquitoes, meaning that actually biological weapon was patented by the United States or US scientists. This was in 2014. So I found the lawyer who submitted his application, and it turned out that such a scientist actually didn't exist. His lawyer told me that his client didn't want to talk to me. I asked if this is a pseudonym or this is a real name. He again refused to talk to me, but I did my research and I couldn't find such a name of such a scientist, but I did find that the same scientist or somebody with this name, under this name or pseudonym, also patented bullets, stroke-inducing bullets, which is also biological or chemical weapon. This was very interesting for me to discover such patented biological or chemical weapon in the US Patent Registry.
So this is public information, the
Yes.
development of biological weapons. Okay, so let's watch this section.
A recent U.S. patent for a toxic mosquito aerial release system granted by the United States Patent and Trademark Office in 2014. The invention includes a drone that can release infected mosquitoes. According to the patent documents, it is capable of delivering lethal and non-lethal toxins, including an agent that can be carried and administered by a mosquito. The inventor of the drone for releasing the toxic mosquitoes, S. Mill Calvert, has patented 42 similar military inventions for the U.S. Army and Special Forces, including stroke-inducing bullets in a span of just 2 years from 2013 to 2015.
And so this is what you were just describing, and then you attempted to reach the scientist, and it turned out that the scientist doesn't exist and it's a pseudonym, and that's where
Yes.
you ran into kind of a dead end where you couldn't get any more information. Again, this should just be raising huge questions. This does raise huge questions. Lastly, maybe let's show the section where you confront the the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services at the time, Robert Kadlec. He was in HHS from 2017 to 2021 until last year through the Trump administration. So let's show this clip of you confronting him.
Yes, this
Thank you.
happened during press it was a conference on biological weapons in Brussels at the European Parliament.
Okay.
Gaytandzhieva asked the U.S. Assistant Secretary of Health, Robert Kadlec, for a comment during a conference on biological weapons at the European Parliament in Brussels, and was immediately expelled from the conference.
Why has the Pentagon been operating military biolaboratories in 25 countries, bordering on the U.S. Main rivals, Russia, China, and Iran? And why has the number of deadly outbreaks in all those countries increased dramatically since the start of the military program of the United States in these countries?
I will just say unequivocally and undeniably, the U.S. does not have a military biological weapons program. Period. End of statement. Number two, we have been working, and I do know for the Department of Defense, they've been working with partners in parts of the world to ensure that those laboratories, and we train them on how to do diagnostic tests on these diseases, to ensure that they can manage them and also safely secure those pathogens so they're not accessible by terrorists or by criminals who would do ill with them.
While all these projects classified information, all these biolaboratories of the Pentagon in 25 countries across the world, why are they classified information?
They're not classified, they're openly available to anyone who wants to look at them.
No, I tried.
Okay.
No, this is not true. They're classified information.
No, you had
Why?
your chance. It's not an investigation here, I'm very sorry.
Why are you talking about
But of course, but I will not let you,
threats? Why can't
I
we
will
talk
not
about
give you the word
real-
like this. We
real
try
threats?
to answer your questions, but that's not the place. Case closed. Thank you very much.
Just one more question.
You can take questions right now.
What is the need of military biolaboratories of the United States in 25 countries across the
I
world?
can't answer that question. That's not his capacity.
This is public area. I can, sorry, I can use the elevator. I can use the elevator.
Sorry, not this one. This one's full.
No, it is not full. Please, I can use the elevator. I can use the elevator. Come.
No more questions then.
Why not?
Okay, we're either going down.
Why is the Pentagon investing
We've gotta
$65
get going.
million in gene editing?
I'm sorry.
The gene editing is part of these programs. Can you answer why?
So basically, you run into another dead end there. They clearly do not want to talk, and these are things that I think elected officials and American journalists should be asking. But you and Bulgaria seem to be the only one doing this. What do you think?
For me, it was strange that U.S. media were not interested into the fact that the Pentagon has spent $2.1 billion U.S. taxpayers' money on the health, as they say, on the health of foreign citizens in foreign laboratories, instead of on spending this money on the health of their own citizens. This was very inexplicable to me in the beginning, but then when these US media outlets started deliberately targeting my investigation and without providing any facts, they provide only beautiful statements by government officials stating that always for the good of the local population. Then I actually realized that I'm on the right path because there is something more in this story, and I continued my investigation. And many more facts and documents appeared, proving that all this program actually is a cover of something bigger. And as Victoria Nuland said and confirmed yesterday, the result of this program are research materials about which the United States is very worried that they can fall into the hands of Russia, meaning that these research materials are of concern not only to Russia but to all of us, because we all suffer from for instance, from the pandemic, how many people died in this pandemic. And if in the beginning, all mainstream media targeted journalists or scientists who dared to challenge the official narrative about the origin of the virus, now more and more, even mainstream media are publishing articles about the possibility of a laboratory leak during an American program in the Wuhan laboratory.
Right. And well, so now, as you said, these kinds of programs are coming to your country, Bulgaria, which is an EU and NATO member, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And
yes, we are NATO member state and EU member state.
And there's some pretty remarkable videos that I want to show of the Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Kirill. Tell me if I'm saying his name properly, Kirill Petkov.
Yes.
Basically making some really rash statements about Russia. So let me see if I can pull these videos up.
Actually, Bulgaria now is following the official policy of the European Union and NATO, and he made very weird comments that we can listen to now.
You're being generous. Weird.
Yes, I'm trying to be polite.
Right. Yeah, I mean, well, like, so first, just tell us, who is Petkov? So I know he's Harvard educated, and so he's basically like a tool of the US.
He is the new Prime Minister of Bulgaria. We are in Bulgaria are amazed by his statements and his policy, and you'd better play the video so that people understand what I mean.
Right. Okay, here we go. Here's one comment from Petkov.
Много мощна, но нейната икономика реално е много лимитирана. Тя, ако погледнете Русия на световната карта като част от световните икономика, тя е съвсем мъничка. Ако нарисувате картата на света с икономиката, тя е съвсем мъничка и де-факто какво има Русия? Има петрол и газ, и има оръжие. И всъщност прилича на една бензиностанция с ракети.
So he says Russia is a tiny country with gasoline and weapons. And
it looks like a petrol station with rockets.
Right, a petrol station with rockets. Then here we have a statement from Petkov saying, Bulgaria, this is from 2 days ago. This is from March 7th. So Monday, Bulgaria may seek exception to any EU sanctions on Russian gas and oil. So, basically he's admitting that Bulgaria is completely reliant on Russian gas and oil, like so much of Europe. And so the prices are already skyrocketing across Europe. And, if there are sanctions, then, obviously Bulgaria is going to suffer, and he's going to feel the wrath of the people.
People in Bulgaria, they got very angry because of all the statements that came from our Prime Minister, because the former defense minister wanted Bulgaria to stay neutral in this conflict for many reasons. One of it being exactly this reliance that Bulgaria has on Russian gas and gasoline also. And not only, we are totally reliant on economically on these Russian supplies. So our Prime Minister inexplicably preferred to not or to involve Bulgaria in this conflict by promising to provide aid to Ukraine. And our former defense minister didn't want this to happen, so he was fired.
And so what does what can Bulgaria militarily offer to Ukraine?
This is a very good question, because we have destroyed our weapons and military might that we once had. But after Bulgaria joined NATO, we were told to destroy everything so that we would be totally reliant on defense from NATO. We don't have good or new fighter jets. We have old fighter jets from the Soviet era, such old fighter jets. We don't have proper air defense. We have old tanks. So Bulgaria, in military terms, is not a competitor. It is even not able to defend itself in any way. So Bulgaria, what we can offer to Ukraine? Nothing, basically nothing. We can't offer anything. They wanted Bulgaria to provide our old fighter jets to Ukraine, but after the scandal broke out, people got very angry and this didn't happen. But our prime minister was targeted with snowballs during our National Liberation Day. And what is interesting is that our National Liberation Day, this is the day when we celebrate our liberation from Turkish occupation in 1878-79. And this happened thanks to the sacrifice of thousands of Russian soldiers who fought for our liberation. They fought against the Ottoman Empire, part of which Bulgaria was. So thousands of Russian soldiers died for our liberation. And every year on the 3rd of March, we celebrate this date and say thank you to Russia. And what was funny was that exactly this day, our prime minister went to this monument, the monument of our liberation, and he was targeted immediately by people with snowballs because of his statements.
Let's watch. We have that video. Let's hear. Yes, this one. Let's watch it. So he's saying Happy Liberation Day. That's the date you're referring to of the liberation from the Ottoman Empire.
Yes.
Basically, as you said, thanks to Russia at that point. So here he is.
Честит празник, българи!
So his security guard managed to block a snowball that would have pelted him right in the face, and then there's more. So then he's being denounced as a traitor. And then people chanting against NATO. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, not knowing Bulgarian politics, if Bulgaria is completely reliant on Russia for fuel and so much more, yet is basically denouncing Russia as a petrol station with rockets, I mean, and talking about sending its tiny little arsenal of decrepit fighter jets to Ukraine, it sounds like it's more posturing, to be in the good graces of the United States and the EU than any serious policy, considering he's just, basically then begged the EU to not apply any sanctions, for purchasing Russian gas.
This is the hypocrisy of all politicians, not only Bulgarian politicians, but all of them, including European bureaucrats and the United States. Because what we are witnessing now, it is something very shocking and very unacceptable. Europe has become totally totalitarian. Now, with all this propaganda, what I'm witnessing in my country, not only in the whole of Europe, all Russian TV channels, media, they are fully blocked. Why is that? Why
This is across the European Union now. Russian state media is blocked. You can't watch RT, you can't watch Sputnik or anything like that. So sorry to interrupt you.
Exactly, this is unacceptable. You can't block media simply because I even don't know, because I have no explanation. Why do you prevent people from hearing the other side of the conflict? This is conflict which consists of two sides. One is the Russian side, the other is Ukraine, the United States, because let's not hide ourselves in our heads in the sand. This is a war between Russia and the United States. This is a proxy war, and Ukraine, this is just the battlefield. But the reality is this war between the United States and Russia. I don't want to listen to the American side anymore. I have listened to the American side for ages, because in Bulgaria, media present only the American point of view. I don't want to listen to them anymore. I want to listen to the point of view of the local people living in Donbass. Nobody in my country, no matter that we are so close to this conflict area, nobody even in my country knew that since 2014, people living in Donbass in eastern Ukraine, they were bombarded and killed on daily basis with heavy artillery, Grad rockets, mortar shells. These are weapons that they are indiscriminately targeting civilians, the civilian population, because it is hard to predict where they are going to fall. Many children, women, civilians died. 14,000 people died in Donbass. They were killed by the Ukrainian army and neo-Nazis. People in my country didn't know that neo-Nazis in Ukraine burnt alive people, including Bulgarians. We have 240,000 Bulgarians living in Ukraine. Do you know how many times they contacted Bulgarian media, asking them for help, asking them to make or to show the reality and these atrocities that they suffered over these years? Nothing was shown. Probably just once one of our national TV channels in 2015 showed these atrocities and showed how Bulgarians were burnt alive, and they were burnt alive during an arson which was started by neo-Nazis in Ukraine, in Odessa. Not only this, many other cases in which Bulgarians, they were tortured, they were left to die of hunger simply because they refused to go on the front line to kill Russians living in Donetsk and Lugansk. Donetsk and Lugansk, these are the two separatist republics that declared independence in 2014 and 2015, and that had been targeted by the Ukrainian army for 8 years. So Bulgarians living there, they refused to take part in this ethnic cleansing and to kill Russians living in this area. For that reason, the Bulgarian flag was desecrated many times. Bulgarians were burnt alive. Our language was, our fellow countrymen were banned from speaking Bulgarian language, and all other languages actually were banned in Ukraine. So people in my country didn't know that, because for years we are forced to watch only the one certain point of view. I don't want to listen this point of view or to watch it anymore. I want to watch what is really happening in Ukraine, not only in Ukraine. And I've been war correspondent for a few years, and I myself I can say, I can prove it. What media show has nothing to do with the reality on the ground. I can give many examples, but this is so true. The first casualty of every war, this is the truth. This is what happened in Libya. I was in Libya. In Gaza, I was also in Gaza. In Syria, I was also in Syria. And all media lies about all these countries. I've seen them on the ground. They have nothing to do with reality. And now about Ukraine, we don't know what is happening in Ukraine because we are not able to access information about what is happening in Ukraine. We see only propaganda. Sorry for my emotional statement, but this is not fair. I feel so sorry for all these journalists on the battlefield, on the ground in Ukraine, in Donbass, in Donetsk. Nobody shows their reports. Why? They are the real heroes, risking their life to provide the truth to the people around the world. And their voices, they have been silenced. Their videos, they have been blocked. Why? These people are risking their life for us, for all of us, to see the truth.
Right. It's a very similar phenomenon here in the United States. I mean, there is no media coverage of this 8-year Ukrainian war on Donbass. You can't find really a single report about it. Just the separatist states, and even, if you look at the reporting from the last several years about the existence of neo-Nazis in Ukraine, it all dismisses it as Russian propaganda. It's pure Russian propaganda. But at then the same time, they'll embed with the Azov battalion and say these are, volunteer fighters and nationalists, and use friendlier terms. And we're continuing to see that now as for example, NATO just promoted a Nazi on its Twitter yesterday, and after getting bombarded with replies pointing out that it was actually a Nazi, they deleted it. But the US media, and basically media in all of these, in so many countries across Europe, that in the so-called democracies, have really just towed the exact same line. So in the US and EU countries, I mean, there's basically no awareness unless you follow alternative media, or you look to, I mean, for a long time RT has of course been reporting on this, but now in the EU that's banned. I mean, so it really undermines this whole claim that these countries are even democratic in the first place. No,
there is nothing democratic in Europe now. I was very small kid when the communist regime was toppled in Bulgaria, but my parents told me that during the communist times, people in Bulgaria, they hid in their homes and secretly listened to Radio Free Europe. The same is happening now, 30 years on, after the communist regime, also after the fall of the communist regime in Bulgaria. All of us have to install VPN or other tools and applications to be able to listen to or to watch the other point of view. The first rule of journalism is to present all possible points of view and all sides in a story. Now, this is no longer journalism. This is something that it can be called journalism. This is no longer journalism. What Bulgarian and European or Western or American journalists are showing now. Even if we talk about Laboratories, the main topic of our conversation now, this is not journalism. I can't believe how journalists cannot challenge this Secretary of State woman that said bad words about Europe. If I quote her now, your YouTube channel will be
right. Victoria Nuland. Yeah, I mean, there's one thing I can say about that. Victoria Nuland she said, F the European Union. That was her famous quote from 2014 when they were basically deciding who is going to run Ukraine. Victoria Nuland spent during the Trump years, she was at the Center for a New American Security, which I did a report for Behind the Headlines several months ago on Center for a New American Security. It is funded by the Pentagon, the State Department, a bunch of weapons manufacturers, oil corporations, and it's become the premier think tank basically for Democrats, but kind of the center, not only for Democrats, for kind of the permanent, it's the premier permanent war think tank. And Victoria Nuland was there until recently, when she joined the Biden administration last year. And there are also, as I show in my report, several top correspondents in the New York Times, in foreign policy, in Washington, who have fellowships at Center for a New American Security. So you basically have, these correspondents, national security correspondents who have spent their entire careers lying, whether it was about Iraqi weapons of mass destruction or claims about Iran's weapons of mass destruction or about Russiagate. So many different lies they've put out. And so they're actually tied to this same think tank that Victoria Nuland, among many others who went into the Biden administration, are from and were paid heavily to. So there's no actual separation. It's just one big entity, basically the media, the U.S. government, and the military and the arms manufacturers. It's all just one entity. So yeah, that's that I think explains a lot of why we don't see any media outlets investigating, U.S. media outlets investigating or holding to account what Victoria Nuland and Marco Rubio were talking about. And instead, what we see is, these constant attacks on you, the only journalist who has actually bothered to investigate these biological laboratories. So, all respect to you for that. Is there anything else you want to say before we end the show?
I want to thank you so much, and personally to you, to your media, for giving me the opportunity to speak up, for your support. And I want to say a big thank you to your viewers for waiting for this conversation for quite some time, and to promise that I will never give up, and I'm continuing this investigation. And I urge people who have knowledge, expertise, or desire to join me. They are welcome. Any help is welcome.
Yeah, how can people find your work, and also how can they support you?
I've been DDoSed or subjected to a huge hacker attack on my media platform, Arms Watch, for a year and a half. And this coincided with one of my investigations into the Luga Center in Georgia. So now I'm publishing my work on my personal website, dilyana.bg.
Okay. I want to spell that so everyone can. So here, I'll pull it up so everyone can see where to find Dilyana's excellent work. There we go. Dilyana, DILYANA.BG. You can see all of these investigations there. So thank you once again, Dilyana Gaytandzhieva, the investigative journalist.
Thank you.